Welcome. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Dr. Lee W. Bass Community Grand Rounds that we have annually, and our fifth, I can't believe it's our fifth, annual Dina Hofkosh Pediatric Educator Symposium. We are thrilled to be able to highlight all the work of our medical educators and all of our trainees that are doing awesome med ed work here today. And to kick off, we will start with our Bass Lecture, which honors Dr. Bass, who for more than 40 years provided medical care to thousands of local children. And he also served as a mentor for medical students and residents. Many saw Dr. Bass as more than a physician, offering unwavering support, guidance, and encouragement to all of his patients, parents, and trainees during difficult times. He was a strong believer in medical education, and he participated in the community-based pediatric training program that was designated for residents who had a strong interest in community pediatrics. And that program is still strong today under the leadership of Dr. Watson, Dr. Tass, and Dr. Wolford. We have a wonderful Hofkosh Symposium that'll start at 9 following Grand Rounds, so please stay for that, and we'll talk more about the wonderful contributions of Dr. Hofkosh during her time here. So this year's visiting professor is Dr. Brad Sobolewski, and we are thrilled to have him here. He is a professor of pediatrics in the Division of Emergency Medicine at Cincinnati Children's Hospital's Medical Center and the University of Cincinnati College of Medicine. He serves as an associate medical director for physician and team-based education, focusing on continuing medical education and institutional-wide educational initiatives. If you didn't notice on the way in with the walk-in music that we are for the first time having, Dr. Sobolewski is originally from Pittsburgh, and we've been celebrating his welcome back home here. He was raised in the area, went to Alderdice High School, and graduated from the University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine in 2004. Dr. Sobolewski is a national leader in digital medical education and dissemination, and that's what he's going to talk about with us today. He is the founder of PemBlog and host of PEM Currents, the Pediatric Emergency Medicine podcast. His work focuses on innovative approaches to knowledge translation, including digital platforms, visual design, and improving how evidence reaches clinicians at the point of care. Please join me in a warm welcome back home to Dr. Brad Sobolewski.
That's okay. How are you doing? So I will have a disclosure to make because it's a Grand Rounds talk, or should I say Grand Rounds. I do serve as the dissemination lead for the PCARN Home Run Node, which is the Hospitals of the Midwest Emergency Research Node, and my work is supported through PCARN funding from HRSA. So I will be discussing my experience with the organization. There's also a couple of AI pictures. So today I'm going to talk about digital scholarship and knowledge dissemination. So we'll go into what those topics are and how I define them. But along the way, we are going to spoil some movies. We're going to talk about visual design. We're going to talk about quality improvement, and I will show the mandated run chart. And we might have a disco party. All right. Let me tell you a little bit of a story, though. And so, like a lot of us, we build a professional career with cumulative experiences and opportunities. They sort of build on each other. So I went to Washington and Jefferson College, which is about 50 minutes southwest of here. And I had a lot of awesome experiences in college. At one point, the motto for the college was 2 great presidents, 1 great college. And they realized that was dumb, and they took it off the billboards. Anyway, I was a radio DJ in college. And so you could listen to Sobo at night on WXJX FM 92.1. I would play a twin spin of Pearl Jam. And our motto was we rock for 5 blocks because like the antenna was so small that like no one could hear you. But that being said, I learned about projecting my voice and timing and audio. And a lot of that came in very handy later on. Then I went to med school at Pitt. And I learned how to edit video. And this was not for like med ed video. We made silly educational video, or silly videos rather, for our annual talent show. Allegedly, I was in a boy band known as Out of Sync, but no one in this room knows whether or not that happened. I'm staring at someone in particular. But but we're shooting on mini DV tapes, but this is like nonlinear editing. This is how you do it. You shoot the middle and then you shoot the beginning and the end, and then you sort them out on the timeline. It was a really fun and important skill to learn. One of my other favorite things that I got to do during medical school was, along with Neil Budlani and Josh Engler, was be one of the head writers for LASIX Unloaded, which was the 50th annual Scope and Scalpel. I played a character known as Orifice. Orifice got to meet the hero, whose name was Uno, and I offered him a red pill and a blue pill, and he impulsively took the blue pill because, like, he saw the commercial with Bob Dole, and if you don't know who Bob Dole is, he was on The Simpsons before you were born. Anyway, if you scan this QR code, you can watch the whole video. Maybe you might see Dr. Miller singing a version of a Bon Jovi song at the VA. That might be, or dressed up as an STD. So that's also. So Open Scalpel is actually tonight and tomorrow night, and they have an excellent pun title. It's Trauma Mia, which I think is great. And then when I was a chief resident, I learned how to build websites. We had to build the internal platform for our residency. So I learned a little bit of light HTML and organizing things online. And that's come in handy later also. So the things you do when you're younger, the things you learn, they might come in handy. And so this is a little bit of a timeline of some of the different things that I've been fortunate enough to do through wonderful mentorship and opportunities, and all these skills. Like, you've acquired some of these skills, and they may come in handy in disseminating knowledge. So I'll talk about them briefly. Back when social media and Twitter were novel and healthy and wonderful, we did a trivia contest on Twitter. So one of my colleagues, Matt Mitiga, who was a Pitt trainee, did a paper that basically looked at all the ABP content specifications for pediatric emergency medicine for peds residents, and did our residents in one of the busiest hospitals in the world see all of those things? And the spoiler answer is no, they did not. And so I said, man, I want to teach people stuff. So I tweeted out questions. People answered. The first person got points. They got a plaque at the end. But then after they got the answer, I sent them a link on Twitter to a blog with more information, because it was 140 characters at that time. So this was a proto blog that I put on Blogger, and it's still out there somewhere. But I outgrew that blog. And then in 2012, I started blogging at PemBlog, Pediatric Emergency Medicine. I've been doing that ever since. And then a year later, I started a podcast, which was the coursework in my master's in medical education curriculum design course. And so I've had the delightful opportunity to work with many trainees and colleagues. Natan Kramer wrote several blog articles here in the past. I've gotten to make educational videos, initially on Vimeo because we needed password protection, and then later on YouTube. That's my professional YouTube channel. If you find my personal YouTube channel, you'll find anniversary videos that I overproduce and make for my wife every year. That's up to you to find those. I've worked with the American Academy of Pediatrics with the Section on Emergency Medicine's Education Steering Committee. I got to host PEMPICS at the National Conference, which is a visual diagnosis competition, and they let me dress up as a cowboy, which was like fun for some reason. EmergiQuiz is a clinical pathologic conference. We put cases online. Choosing wisely tells people not to do stuff like, you don't need an x-ray for constipation, because where else is the poop going to be? And we made podcasts and videos and blog entries, and I got fellows to do those with me. And our newest thing is Babble Royale, where 4 junior faculty give their best 8-minute presentation, and they enter the conference room like pro wrestlers with music and like entrance videos. The winner defends their title at the next conference. Our current champion is La Boca Grande, Elise Portillo from Texas Children's. That was like her nickname that her grandma gave her when she was little, because she talked a lot. I've had a chance to work with EMSC and make podcast series. So 5 different podcast creators, each gave a different topic on pain management, and we released that as a little series. And I'll talk about my work with Home Run later. I've had a chance to help plan our annual Fellows Conference. They let me design their logos, which I like really enjoy doing. I made t-shirt designs in college. I can't show them because they had pictures of beer and other things. The Fellows Conference has been a great place to meet people that are emerging in the field and build collaborations and find mentees and colleagues. You know what the heck? I'll reveal a 2027 location logo. It's in Austin. All the fellows are excited about that. More recently, I've had a chance to work with Pediatric Emergency Care, which is the journal of our field. The new editors, Mark Newman and Joe Zork, knew that we needed video abstracts. So I've been fortunate enough to help work with really bright people all around the country to film those. And then Josh Belfer, who is a new faculty at CHOP, is doing an interview series with like legends in our field. So you can see this one with Steve Ludwig and Gary Fleischer, who basically formed our field 40 years ago on a plane flight back from a conference in Vegas, right? And then, you know, my work at Cincinnati Children's, I totally thought I was going to stay in Pittsburgh forever. Sorry, Mom. And I ultimately made the decision to go to Cincinnati for residency, and I've been there ever since. Most recently, I've taken basically Noel's type of job as CME medical director and some other educational opportunities. And I just wanted to take one moment to thank you, and especially Savannah, who's the real star of the show, for helping plan all of this and being very organized and things. So thank you for that. But I'm going to teach you a new term today, and that term is UNC. It is a slang term meaning uncle, often used to refer to older men. I think it's a sign of respect or familiarity. Like, so even if this person's not a relative, you're like, hey, what's up with that UNC? Maybe like old school. And I wrote this in the notes, and then I got a call as I was standing up here, and I was correct. My 16-year-old said, "Good luck, UNC," this morning as he called me on his way into school. Speaking of 16-year-olds, these are this picture of my sons on the left are 11, 14, and 16-year-old. Just ignore what's on the shirt of the 16-year-old if you can read it. I'm standing there with my mom and my youngest and oldest with my dad there at PNC Park. My mom's actually in attendance right now. I'm not going to ask you to like raise your hands, but thank you for the team to allowing her to come see me present today. Speaking of dads, all right. So you could know almost nothing about Star Wars and still know one thing. Darth Vader is Luke Skywalker's dad, right? Most of you probably know that, even if you've never seen the movies. So sorry, I spoiled it. Still watch it. There's cool stuff. All right. So for many people, that's the entire cultural memory of The Empire Strikes Back and probably like all of Star Wars. Not the lightsaber fights, not the Force, not the cool aliens with impossible names, not the fact that Han Solo is like the coolest dude alive. It's just one memorable plot twist that survived decades of retelling. I think that might be how a lot of medical knowledge works right now as well. So again, you know, you can know almost nothing about Star Wars and still know that Luke, you know, Darth Vader is Luke's dad. But if that's all you knew, you'd miss out on Yoda, the tiny green philosopher who doles out wisdom with bizarre syntax. And then you'd miss lightsabers, which are awesome. And I think medicine sort of works the same way. So not everybody needs the same depth of knowledge about every topic. A pulmonologist needs to master asthma. A gastroenterologist must know constipation inside and out. But most clinicians can't maintain the same level of expertise across everything they encounter. There's just like too much information, too much change, too little time. This really changes what disseminating knowledge needs to accomplish. And so for a lot of clinicians, the first goal isn't mastery, it's recognition or recall. You got to know the key idea and then knowing when it matters and knowing where to go for the details. And so we have clinical pathways, online references, decision support, AI tools. Clinicians increasingly have to offload some of the information and some of the deeper detail. You may not remember the entire guideline, but you do need to remember the thing that triggers action. So that's why like the spoiler matters, okay? So the cultural memory of The Empire Strikes Back is not every single scene. It's the durable idea. Vader is Luke's dad. So in medicine, we need that durable takeaway. For croup, the takeaway is like give dexamethasone. Like you're barking, you have croup, here's some dex, like throw it at them and it lands in their mouth. Obviously, there's a lot more to know, like severity assessments and rack epi and observation periods. But for someone who's busy and sees croup only occasionally, if they remember that croup gets dex, they're remembering the Vader is Luke's dad version of croup. I think it's not a mistake per se, but a little bit of a trap in research, QI, and education is disseminating as if though every audience member is ready for the full trilogy. Most people only have bandwidth for the spoiler first. So you start with the memorable core message, then you provide practical action, then deeper explanation, then the evidence base for people who want to go further. And if the first layer, that spoiler, doesn't stick, then the rest might never get used. So dissemination has to respect bandwidth, start with the spoiler, then give people path to the full saga. This is the way. And while I'm already ruining movies for everyone, I'm going to spoil a few more. Rosebud is a sled. It was Earth all along. And Bruce Willis was a ghost. All right. Dissemination is getting the right message to the right audience. And successful dissemination requires thinking beyond publication and national presentations. We should use intentional audience-focused strategies rather than searching for just the one best approach. And there is no one-size-fits-all approach. We are sort of working on this as we go along. And in terms of categorizing all these different modalities that I'll talk about, I think we can leverage some existing educational frameworks to provide a bit of a practical taxonomy to sort of help understand the depth of their impact. So that's where the Kirkpatrick model comes in. And this is an educational framing of assessing knowledge. Level 1 on awareness and engagement, level 2 learning, 3 behavior and practice change, and 4 on patient or systems outcome. This is, I think, a simple framing structure to organize dissemination work. It recognizing that not everything has the same level of impact. You know, social media infographic and system-wide pathway implementation, fundamentally different forms of impact, but they can exist together in sort of translating knowledge. And this Kirkpatrick model doesn't replace frameworks like REAIM, Reach, Effectiveness, Adoption, Implementation, and Maintenance. CFIR, the Consolidated Framework for Implementation Research. There's excellent dissemination work happening here in Pittsburgh. Those frameworks, you know, those are different questions about implementation and maintenance. I do want to talk about how we structure this dissemination and how I'm working to categorize it within our research node. So level 1 is reaction. This is a great secondary outcome for educational studies. Be like, I liked it, but that shouldn't be your primary outcome. And so this could be impressions, downloads, podcast listens, page views, attendance, an altmetric score. This is a measure of, did people see it, hear it, or engage with it? Level 2 is, did people learn something or change how they think? Classically, this is like a pre and post test. It could be a procedural skills assessment with a rubric. It could be, you know, a virtual case with a diagnostic reasoning answer afterwards. Ultimately, this is also an important secondary outcome because if you launch a curriculum, you kind of want it to teach people. But the real goal for a lot of med ed work is behavior change, right? And so this is, did people actually change what they do, whether they're self-reporting it or did we observe them? And so observation can be direct, like you could record a video of somebody doing something and say, hey, they did a good job at that. Or you can follow it by proxy, like looking at utilization rates of an EHR integrated order set or prescribing change, was it adherence to a pathway? These are much harder to assess, but much more valuable when it comes to med ed research. Level 4 is very hard to get at, and I think for dissemination, this requires multiple things threaded together. This is really outcomes that meet the patient and family or population level. No single podcast is going to meet any of these, but digital media, digital scholarship can be part of it. And so when we are, you know, planning knowledge dissemination efforts, you have to plan it from the start. Who needs to hear it and in what form? Your core message should start early during your grant writing, during your curriculum planning, during IRB protocol and development. And then that core message should stay consistent across the manuscript, discussion, and conclusion, all of your posters, all of your presentations, podcasts, blogs, social media, right? This is like advertising. The billboard is the same as the YouTube video, is the same as the podcast ad, is the same as the print, is the same as the thing that runs during the Super Bowl. You're telling everybody the same thing in different ways at different times, but the same message. And effective dissemination, you know, starts with knowing your audience, right? So, and something for a pediatric emergency medicine doctor might be different than for a trainee, a nurse, a patient and family. We have to translate the science into formats that people can process quickly. So visual aids, concise summaries, podcasts, videos, infographics. Use multiple channels. Journals still matter. That's where the conversation happens. That's an abridged quote from Lorelei Lingard, who is an amazing med ed researcher. But people can also learn through podcasts and blogs and social media, conference talks, old school peer-to-peer, emails, and, you know, trusted voices help this spread. The word trusted is really important here. That will help us find people that people already know and listen to and follow, and that will help with measuring impact, engagement, and ultimately practice change. So that I'm going to shift a little bit and introduce you to a guy named Tim. So this is Tim Dribbin. He's an emergency medicine attending at Cincinnati Children's. And he's one of the leads of an international research group working to answer important questions about the care of anaphylaxis, such as what is anaphylaxis? And I've always felt like anaphylaxis is beautiful art. Like I can look at a painting and be like, oh man, that's a great painting. And like Ben Miller can look at a painting being like, that painting stinks. And anaphylaxis is sort of similar. Like, I don't know, this kid has like 5 hives and threw up once. Is that anaphylaxis? Maybe, right? And so it's actually a hard question to answer. So along with defining the disease, he's looking at severity, which children can safely go home after epinephrine, and how long do they have to be observed? Like 6 hours for cardiovascular symptoms. Like you puke once and have hives, you got EpiPen, 2 hours, you're out of here. 30 medical organizations, 15 patient advocacy groups, and Tim has had a chance to do podcasts and blogs and media coverage, national and international presentations. This is a really good example of someone who's working hard on a single area for consistent modern dissemination, and he's really trying to reach patients and families on an important disease. So my part in this is that I've been fortunate enough to work with Tim on a consistent visual design language across all of his publications and presentations. So all of his figures and graphics and charts and algorithms, they all sort of look the same. We have a house style that we developed. And if you want to learn more about innovative visual design, join me a little later this morning for our workshop. Right? So this is a visual style sheet that I put together for this talk. And so we use the same font. This is data dense research, right? There's a lot of like Delphi studies where you're asking tons of people through multiple rounds. And so we've got, these different circles which represent percents of agreement. The little dots below the circles is the number of rounds in the Delphi that it took. In the use of color, different anaphylaxis organ systems each have their own logos and colors. They repeat throughout studies, for some consistency. This is 2 different studies, similar figures, different organ systems for anaphylaxis, just to give a little bit of visual anchoring. These are also from 2 different studies using the same kind of data demonstration for the figures. And yeah, like it's fun to make like cool jazzy figures, but these go through multiple iterations, and we really wanted to do something other than just like text and table, right? Because this is hard information to sort of absorb. Here's another one that sort of mixes some of those data elements with some of the colors. The one on the right is from what level of symptoms in what organ system would this consensus group say, do you give epi or not? And then the level of agreement and the number of rounds in their Delphi. So it was a lot of dense information, and it started out as like 4 tables, and we brought it together into one infographic to tell the story. 4 different presentations of anaphylaxis. So repeating design elements across the way just to show how anaphylaxis can present. And we make multiple different versions of decision support tools, like moving elements around and trying things, kind of like advertisers in visual design. And so we get researchers and patients and families and other colleagues and visual design people to look at these and make sure that these actually make sense, can flow, and can be used online, in print, on a phone. Speaking of phones, Tim, this is completely free. It is an anaphylaxis decision support tool for clinicians, right? And so you can see some of the design elements. It will give you reminders after you've given epi, and we have sent this out to community pediatricians and practices. If you give somebody epi for anaphylaxis and you're watching them in a clinic environment, it's a way that you can sort of follow their symptoms. So again, this is from his grant funding. There's no charge to use it. The goal is as many people as want can use this as a tool. So I'll give you a moment to scan it and take a drink. All right. So let's talk about taglines next. You guys heard this one? Factor first. Okay. I think a good tagline matters, because memorable messaging ideas is easier to sort of recognize, repeat, and put them into practice. Like good movies have good taglines, right? In space, no one can hear you scream. Alien, excellent. Just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water. Technically Jaws too, but good. Who are you going to call? Thank you. All right, good. Who has seen signs like these in break rooms and bathrooms and conference rooms, right? This is part of dissemination, right? It's memes, but it's also part of dissemination. And so kids with hemophilia at Cincinnati Children's had delays in getting factor due to limited familiarity with bleeding disorder management and home factor use. Parents would like bring their factor and we're like, give this. And we're like, what? You could like, this is your own medicine. And this was increasing risk. And so Christina Tarango, who's the medical director of hemophilia, and Lisa Littner, who's the program manager, have done an amazing QI project where their main goal is to get factor into kids quicker in the emergency department when they present with bleeding, right? Simple idea, but really took a multidisciplinary approach where they brought in hemophilia treatment center, emergency medicine, pharmacy, nurses, data teams from our EMR, family advisors to come up with a plan. And their educational tools, wallet cards, multilingual materials, QR link videos, nurse training, EHR prompts. They did visual campaigns, point of care resources. I got to do a blog post and a podcast episode that they disseminated broadly about this topic, like 15 minutes on talking about hemophilia. And then they did the classic QI tool of weekly time to factor reporting and arrival to administrative tracking. So these are the two episodes. You can see when these came out, like something happened right after that. But they were still able to keep going with their work. It was really fun to collaborate with really smart people and sort of come across the messaging. There was no discussion of clotting cascades. It's really about the evidence behind getting things into people quickly. And Advate, factor 8. Benefix is factor 9, IX at the end. Yeah. Oh, and one of them is called Christmas disease. I believe it's named after Lloyd Christmas from Dumb and Dumber. I talked about QI, so I am legally mandated to show a run chart, which shows all of their implementations and interventions along the way. They've done a wonderful job. This is more appropriate for my ER brain, so they've moved the line from 17% all the way up to 56% for kids getting factor within the first 60 minutes. So there's lots of work to be done. It's very busy. All these kids get triaged to a high level. They get back quickly, and the nurses understand exactly how to work through the process of administering their home medicine. All right, we'll have a little bit of a disco party. But before that, I'm going to show a clip from a TV show. Well, technically, it's a streaming show that many of you have seen. Oh, it's based in Pittsburgh.
That's everything, including an LP, but over 28 days, you can follow PCARN or step-by-step to determine risk of invasive bacterial infection.
Wait, did she just say PCARN? Wow. And so after we heard that, everybody in the PCARN network was like Leo DiCaprio in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Said our thing. Like, we were like so excited. And so what she was talking about with that baby was the management of the febrile infant, one of the core topics in pediatrics and pediatric emergency medicine. So briefly, I'm going to spend about 20 minutes to go over this chart to discuss the differences between step-by-step and PCARN. Okay, fine, I'll summarize it. So these are two tools for evaluating well-appearing febrile infants, identifying those who are low risk for invasive bacterial infection, the goal to reduce lumbar punctures, admissions, and empiric antibiotics. A lot of places sort of blend these two together based on whether or not they have procalcitonin, local workflows, clinical risk tolerance. This is building on Philly, Boston, and Rochester, some of the criteria that have been used for febrile infants over the years. Step-by-Step's out of Spain. PCARN is out of the States. I think they're both great studies and have taught us a lot how to manage febrile infants. But I think when everybody from PCARN heard this episode, this is what they heard instead.
Step by step. PCARN, invasive bacterial infection, PCARN.
This baby looks great.
And the baby does look great. Anyway. So isn't like PCARN just that head injury rule? Like I've had EM residents be like, I PCARN'd that kid. Like, what? We're a verb? It's great. PCARN is actually the Pediatric Emergency Care Applied Research Network. It's the largest pediatric emergency medicine research network in the U.S. It was established in 2001, so we're turning 25 and can rent a car. It was through the Emergency Medical Services for Children. The goal is multi-center research to improve emergency care for kids, and it includes pediatric EDs, children's hospitals, and academic centers. We've enrolled hundreds of thousands of kids through prospective studies, and the research is frequently part of national guidelines in bedside practice. And it's been just a joy to work with a lot of the folks in PCARN over the years. This is representative of our organization chart, and it's similar to many federally funded research studies. You've got a center focused around some regional nodes, and each contains a lead academic center. We partner with emergency departments and hospitals, and the structure is really important for coordinating research, getting data and protocols standardized, improving enrollment across diverse sites, and supporting dissemination and implementation. Been a lot of great PCARN studies over the years. The head trauma rule that we talked about before, about identifying kids at low risk for need for neurosurgical intervention and other serious things that happen when they bonk their head. The DKA fluid trial, you can give fluids like fast or slow, or give normal saline or half normal saline, and the brain will be fine in DKA. The febrile infant rule that I alluded to before, predicting intra-abdominal injury risk in children, and then sort of threading head and abdominal injury risk together. We have a thing called DISCO. So we have a dissemination subcommittee that is officially a part of PCARN. It's led by Joel Donofrio Ordman, who's in San Diego, and Lauren von Holtz, who's in Philadelphia. Each node and each study in PCARN has a dissemination lead. So a person or people are identified as the disseminator. They review the dissemination plan of all protocols, which are written at the stage of the grant, and they're presented at the national meetings. Disseminators are funded and credited, right? Social media and content creation is a lot of what we do and make. Peer-to-peer outreach, like send an old school emails like, hey, this awesome study came out. Here's the practical implementation, right? And then we coordinate with other FOAMed creators, like in emergency medicine and other groups, the lay press, EMSC, hospitals, and more. And so when it came to, that episode of the Pitt, so it aired on January 8th. On January 15th, Children's National posted about it on Instagram.
You can follow PCARN or step-by-step to determine risk of invasive.
So PCARN was mentioned as a source of evidence for the evaluation of young babies with fever. But not only can you use the PCARN febrile infant rule in the second month of life, you can also use it in the first month of life. So look to PCARN for evidence for evaluating and treating children in the pediatric emergency department.
So no one knew that was going to be in the episode. And they were like, hey, Nate Cooperman, that's Nate Cooperman. So if you look at like all PCARN papers or the head injury paper, his name is on them. It's like Michael Bay in the 90s with movies. And so they said, Nate, he's like standing in the hallway, and they asked him to film this. Interestingly, Joe Sachs, who's an emergency medicine doctor and an executive producer for the Pitt, and Nate are long-term friends. And so I had a talk with Sylvia Owusu-Ansah, who was amazing, who served as a consultant for the Pitt. We both wondered aloud if that's how PCARN got mentioned. And, the show's obviously striving for verisimilitude. On February 19th, Children's National posted on their blog. Lots of people within PCARN sent lots of emails. HRSA was not particularly excited about copyright infringement. And so they didn't want to put out any official media capitalizing on the mention. Our dissemination subcommittee did author a template press release to share with all of our hospitals. Like, hey, PCARN's doing great research. It got mentioned on TV. The response from institutions was lukewarm at best. They didn't want to promote the Pitt or HBO Max. There's also this undercurrent of concern from some hospitals about promoting research that's done at other places. Like, we don't want to promote the competition, right? And so all of this was sort of interesting to learn about. So in short, like the mention was great, and we all got our Leo DiCaprio meme going, but we were still caught a little flat-footed, understandably. So let me talk about another study and lessons learned from that one. This is a study called C-Spine, and it was a cervical spine injury prediction rule designed to identify children at very low risk for clinically significant cervical spine injury after blunt trauma. The goal was to reduce CT imaging by more than half, and it was a really well-done study. Again, we knew this one was coming out. We knew that it would be high profile within our field, but the authors understandably couldn't discuss the results in advance. They had an embargo, right? And so we couldn't create podcasts or blogs or visual content or social media or do anything until release day. And we had no idea when the journal was going to release this. So that, coupled with not as strong of an a priori dissemination plan, made it really hard to like scramble and get the message out. So we're very proud of our dissemination effort, but much of it had to sort of be built very quickly and reactively once the paper was released. But what if there was another study that was done where we could do a better job? Look how happy Albumin is here. He's like a great side character. It's like, I love these guys. I would see this movie. Anyway, so Who's heard of prompt bolus in the audience? Look at the acronym for this one. This is like, it's like great. Anyway, this just came out in New England Journal from Fran Balamuth and everybody. It's a multi-center pragmatic randomized trial across 47 EDs in 5 countries, nearly 9,000 kids with septic shock. They randomized them to balanced fluids, so like lactated ringers or normal saline, and there was no difference in death or major kidney outcomes. The lactated ringers kids had like a little bit better electrolytes than the normal saline kids. Otherwise, they were fine. And it sort of reinforced practice that was already out there. But this was another study with an embargo, but we had a better plan this time. So we knew when the paper was going to come out, and the release of the paper was timed on the same day as a PAS presentation. So in advance, Lauren von Holtz from PCARN made a very cute video that said, this paper is coming. We couldn't tell you the results yet, but this paper is coming. So I'm going to show you a brief clip.
47 sites in 5 different countries are releasing the results of their study that evaluated normal saline versus balanced fluids in the treatment of pediatric sepsis. So to get everybody a little bit excited, we asked clinicians all across the United States what they think the answer is going to be.
Saline, lactated ringers, no difference.
Anyway, they even found the lead author and tried to get a kid to trick her into like revealing the answer. And it's on the PCARN Instagram. So they had that, some Instagram posts and other things that tell people like this study is coming, be ready. At 8 a.m. at PAS, there were like 200 people in the room. People were excited about this study. We had an email campaign before and right after the study released with like summaries of the study and links. This is old school peer-to-peer networking. And we're planning sort of staggered dissemination to give it a bit of a long tail. Because if you give everybody everything at once, it just gets all bundled together. And you can use altmetric to see the engagement over time. So I'm not going to do a podcast on this one until the fall. And I'm fine with that. I got a lot going on. So the spoiler for prompt bolus is that normal saline and LR are basically fine. They're great in children with septic shock. You know what? I'm going to spoil one more movie, right? So apparently we do talk about Fight Club. Anyway, moving on. There are more studies coming down the line from PCARN. We have one coming up soon. You don't have to check your hip. It's called Beeper. This is about diagnosing pulmonary emboli in children. So more to come there. Okay, I'm going to shift in sort of the final section of the talk here. And I would agree with Bart that you should put your podcast on your CV. Okay. And so should your digital scholarship, a blog, a podcast, a social media campaign, even if you just appeared in a podcast episode, should that go on your CV or in your application for a professional position like YOI? I think Myron Cope. You know who that is? Oh, I was going to get there, man, but thank you. How about including digital scholarship when you go up for reappointment or promotion? Double YOI. Right. Of course, these are things that we should document as part of our professional activities. The literature shows a clear evolution, so the med-ed literature, from defining digital scholarship to measuring impact to integrating it into promotion and academic advancement, including some work done here in Pittsburgh. And so this is a sort of visual show of some of the studies along the way. But the quick description of this is that in 2015, Josh Sherbino wrote a foundational paper asking when digital content counts as scholarship, and talked about adapting traditional scholarly standards to blogs, podcasts, and social media. In 2018, Cabrera shifted the conversation towards measurement, introducing altmetric, digital portfolios, and broader ways to disseminate. Hussein in 2020, it's a great paper if you want to put RPT guidelines with digital scholarship together. They made digital scholarship more practical for promotion and tenure committees, including guidance on peer review and impact evaluations. 2023, Helton and Pathman, they argued that digital scholarship should not be treated differently and that all scholarship should be judged by the same core standards appropriate to the modality. And then work here from Pittsburgh with Dr. Fitzgerald, a practical framework for documenting digital scholarship and promotion packets, including checklists and other things that people can use as they sort of move along. So digital scholarship extends, beyond just content creation. Like you can make a podcast, but there's tools, there's infrastructure. These are reusable scholarly products, and I think we should treat them as such. And importantly, not everything digital is automatically scholarship, right? So that tweet you put out, 5 years ago, like that's not scholarship per se, simply because it exists online. What matters is the scholarly intent of these materials, the contribution, whether the work is disseminated publicly as part of an effort to educate. Is it archived or reusable? Does it advance learning or practice? Does it demonstrate meaningful engagement or impact? The digital platform is the medium. The scholarly standards still apply. And this is but a few examples of what digital scholarship encompasses. You've got everything from blogs and podcasts to virtual learning platforms, a clinical calculator. Like if you built something for MD Calc or like UTI Calc, right? So people that did that, like that should be super important. More people have used UTI Calc than have read any paper that I have ever written by like 50-fold, right? Like, yes, it's an abstraction of the evidence, but that is so useful, right? That should be one of the most important things that that group put out in their careers, because it really is. And it also includes things like AI-enabled educational or clinical resources. So not just making like a fun AI picture, but actual tools that people use in their work, things that go into the EMR. And so back in 2023, myself and some other colleagues, medical informatics, we were asked to review our RP criteria and say, should digital scholarship be part of our official reappointment and promotion? And yes, we all agreed that it should, because it's a major part of education, research, and dissemination. So faculty contribution in podcasts, blogs, social media, digital tools, and online education should be recognized. The promotion review should assess role, contribution, impact, and reach. Some measure of quality or peer review should be documented and archived and how it was disseminated. It can count towards 25% of publications in a promotion dossier if documented correctly. An evaluation should include, again, measurable engagement, podcast listens, where it went, what it was part of, and evidence of influence on education, scholarship, or practice. These are just a couple of screenshots of the document. I'd be delighted to talk to you about how we've done this if you are interested later. Let me ask another question. So this is all like digital, learning and online stuff. What happens when the loudest voice in medicine isn't a doctor? Right? We all wonder about this. This quote from a very popular podcaster, wondering if it's really his fault if you're getting his vaccine advice. This is the guy who made people eat animal parts on a show called Fear Factor. So we may have already entered the medfluencer area. You guys have heard that portmanteau. Those are great. I like those. Like elderly people, the welderly. It's really fun to like combine words. And there are some medfluencers in medicine that you're probably familiar with. We got Beach Gem, who's pediatric emergency medicine. Got Dr. Glockenflecken. He's got a podcast empire. He did the keynote address at AAP last year. You got Z-Dog MD, who's a physician, and that's a good rapper name. You have Dr. Mike, and then Seattle Mom and Doc, Wendy Sue Swanson. These are all people that have built like lay-focused medical influencers, focusing on generally good evidence and things that are beneficial to patients and families. So over the years, people will be like, dude, you should be a medfluencer. You'd be like famous in that. And I'm like, a lot of the big online creators talk to the general public, and their goal is in attention and engagement. And you can make money off of that, right? Not a lot, but some people have careers based on this. But folks that I work with and folks in PCARN and knowledge dissemination, in my field at least, it's not what we're doing. We're doing specialty focused, clinician facing, PEM and FOMED, people like, Sean Fox and Julia Magana, Dennis Wren, Jason Woods. They built audiences not because their work went viral, it's because people trusted their work over time. All of this grew beyond papers. It includes podcasts and pathways and social media, conference teaching, visual design, implementation work. PCARN Disco with Joelle and Lauren are helping push that within structured frameworks. And the scholarship now isn't just about the content. It's studying how knowledge spreads, how practice changes. And there's no perfect answers. We're doing the old, build the plane while we're flying. And, digital scholarship is like public facing as well. And it's gotten a traditional negative that's, it's not vetted, it's not reviewed, it's not peer reviewed. And so this is where I want to talk about what I call the modern science communication paradox. And the QR code links to a article. It's on Substack, but it's free. It's not a peer-reviewed journal, but I do think that it is a very important discussion on what we're facing in terms of science communication and our professional lives. It's by Jess Steyer, who's a public health scientist. Some of the question that this article raises is the tension in working in digital scholarship, and feeling like, yes, science communication matters, especially in our current information environment, but the systems around it lag behind. Funding is limited. Formal training pathways are sparse. Are we training our fellows in media training? Maybe, right? Academic promotion structures don't reward it appropriately. And we're struggling to define meaningful ways to evaluate impact. So this is the central argument of this article, is that science communication isn't a personality trait or a hobby on top of medicine or research. Done well, it's its own discipline, right? There could be people that are experts in dissemination. It talks about metrics like engagement numbers and impressions and how those are easy to count. But again, we should really be thinking about that Kirkpatrick level 3. How do we change behavior? How do we do things that reach the patient and family? And whether our academic systems appropriately recognize digital scholarship that changes practice is the real issue. So promotion and tenure systems, I think, need meaningful ways to categorize this work, measure impact, and distinguish scholarship from simple visibility or popularity. I love working with colleagues like Tim Dribbin, who's answering great questions about anaphylaxis, but also directly impacting patients and families. I think about our colleagues in hematology, who continue to improve hemophilia care, one factor first bathroom sign to one QI project. I'm really proud to be part of PCARN research organization that truly values dissemination, supports it with protected time, right? I get salary support to work with them, and they listen when people propose new approaches to spreading evidence, which leads to kind of the final point for this audience. What does this mean for you, right? So especially for trainees, junior faculty, and people focused on team-based education, I think dissemination work like this matters. And remember, we're not just educating doctors anymore. We're educating nurses and pharmacists, APPs, patients, families, communities, and increasingly the public itself. We want to build trust. So create something, share it, document your work. If you are not good at video production, design, podcasting, visual communication, social media, or analytics, find a collaborator, often a trainee or junior faculty who is, bring them along with you early in the project and put their name on the paper, right? That's still the currency, right? If your research group doesn't have a dissemination plan, develop one. The PCARN Disco chairs personally told me that anybody who watches this presentation can reach out for advice if you want to do this in a research group or network. Dissemination expertise is expertise. Like if you're good at this, you can be an expert in this. We should build dissemination into the project from day one, not as an afterthought, even if there's an embargo. So you should take that into consideration. Ultimately, the goal of science isn't just publication. The goal is that knowledge spreads, changes behavior, improves systems, and improves lives. And after all, I think some onc once said, if it doesn't spread, it doesn't matter. Thank you.